Epiphany of Truth, TV. In part 1, we went over what Kabbalism is. But what do Kabbalists believe? Let's start with Lurianic cosmology. Before the Tzimtzum and the shattering of the vessel, the various powers of the universe, which are God, were harmoniously balanced and could not be separated from one another, shown in a representation called the Sephirot. These aspects were of opposing forces of compassion, which is the Rachamim and Reshimu, and stern judgment, which is Din, bound together in light. At the beginning of existence, the Yin Sof, which is, once again, a representation of God, withdrew into itself, creating an empty space, which is the Tehiru, within which the forces of Din begin to take an independent life. This deeper concealment or contraction of the Yin Sof thus resulted in a purging of the harsh dross, which contained all elements of potential evil from the being of God. This empty space thus contained the forces of Din and the remnant, the Reshimu, or impression of the divine light. At this point, the Yin Sof emanated a ray, the Kab Hamadah, or cosmic measure, which is represented in the first letter of the Tetragrammaton, Yod. This ray penetrated the Tiru and worked together to organize the opposing forces that now filled this space. The opposing forces were together in a vessel no bigger than a tiny spark, called the divine spark, which was made up of God himself. This ray caused the shattering of the vessel, or the great cataclysm, which separated Rahimim and Din, formed the planets, and brought into manifestation the primordial man, the Adam Kadmon. In Luria's scheme, the biblical Adam had the task of reintegrating the divine sparks, as his being contained all of the various worlds, his body being a perfect microcosm of Adam Kadmon. Adam should have separated the divine sparks from the husks and restored them to the light of the divine. Adam, of course, failed in his cosmic task, and this responsibility has now been passed on to all humanity. It is the task of all humanity to find the sparks of the Spirit buried in the husks of the material world and raise these sparks to their divine source. But what does that mean? It can best be described according to the 13th century mystic, Moses de Leon. The beginning of existence is the secret concealed point. This is the beginning of all hidden things, which spread out from there and emanate, according to their species. As emanation proceeds, as God begins to unfold, the point expands to a circle. Moses Nachmanides, a 13th century Kabbalist rabbi, wrote, "There was only one physical creation, and that creation was a tiny speck. As this speck expanded out, this substance, so thin it has no essence, turned into all matter as we know it." So let me break this down in layman's terms for you. In the beginning, God, being the universe, decided to open up a spot. He pulled back an area that became space. This space was called the Yin Sof. Inside this Yin Sof, he contracted every bit of himself, called the Tzimtzum, which is the great contraction. This caused all matter and spirit to be compressed into a tiny, tiny spark that might not even be visible. You can call it a singularity in today's science. This was done to shed evil. However, these vessels shattered. They shattered, spread out. This cataclysm was called the Shavirat HaKalim, or the shattering of the vessels. In today's quote-unquote science community, they call it the Big Bang. There is no doubt whatsoever that modern science is teaching ancient Kabbalism as far as the origin cosmology goes.
Well, the Kabbalistic description of creation is coming from a single little point, from a speck, and of having matter form and time and space form all together at the very beginning. This sounds very much to me like the description of the Big Bang.
And he's absolutely correct. Now, Jewish scientists didn't just slip on a banana peel and discover their own religion. They've been there from the very beginning, manipulating and teaching their religion as science.
They knew things about the universe that took us till now to discover.
The Zohar's notion that light is a realm of no time and no space is quite consistent with special relativity.
And that sounds amazing until you look at who came up with special relativity. None other than Albert Einstein, who was a Jewish Kabbalist.
It's rather amazing, this uncanny reflection of some of the most advanced cosmology coming from our satellites, coming from our atom smashers, coming from our blackboards, that are mirrored in the Zohar and ancient Kabbalistic texts.
And as I brought up before, it's not very amazing because, as we see, everybody involved is one particular religion, and if they're not, then they're quiet about it because the people that are running the show are from that religion. At this moment, it seems as though science will never be able to raise the curtain on the mystery of creation. For the scientist who has lived by his faith in the power of reason, the story ends like a bad dream. He has scaled the mountains of ignorance. He is about to conquer the highest peak, and as he pulls himself over the final rock, he is greeted by a band of theologians who have been sitting there for centuries. Robert Jastrow, God of the Astronomers. If you're wondering who Robert Jastrow is, he's the founder of the Goddard Space Center. Kabbalists follow the Talmud, in particular the Babylonian Talmud. The Talmud has two components: the Mishnah, which was written down in 190 AD by Rabbi Judah Hanasi, and the Gemara, which was written down around the year 500 AD by Rabbi Yossi Bedethia. Although the Talmud is considered a Jewish book, it's not entirely. It's a mixture of the three religions that I brought up earlier. The Talmud is not the written law. The Talmud is the oral law. And that oral law was corrupted in Babylon. That corruption and that merger with other religions created Kabbalism as we know it today. It's also known as Gnosticism, which is the same religion. The Talmud is a set of 63 volumes containing Jewish tradition and commentary on the Torah. It is the chief repository of Jewish law. There are 37 volumes of the Mishnah, which have Gemara. These are usually published in 20 books. Although there is a slight difference between the Jerusalem Talmud and the Babylonian Talmud, they're very similar. However, they do lead to two different religions. Obviously, Kabbalists and Sabbatean Frankists are not your regular Jews. Because the Talmud took so long to get made, Christianity is actually 200 years older than Judaism. How's that for a surprise?